Thank you for coming. I want to first start by giving you some regards from Phyllis Gilbert. I don't know if anyone's know who she is, but she's from this area. And she is a supporter of the Maine Holocaust Human Rights Center. I didn't see that right again. But anyways, good enough. And she wanted to let you know that she supports Holocaust education and is very appreciative that we're doing this tonight. Additionally, we have Ernie Weiss, who's right there. We have Max Sablowski. This is Harry Blumenthal, Charles Rotmill, and Aruna, and Kenya. So, they're all going to say a short piece of their history, and then it's going to be open up to questions from you guys. So I'm going to start with Ernie Weiss, and then they're just going to pass the mic down. You don't even have to.
A little bit about myself. I was born in Vienna, Austria in 1931. I am Jewish. In June 1938, I was 7 when Germany invaded Austria. My parents, my baby brother Peter and I began our journey to the United States. 3 months later, my father, because he was Jewish, was arrested and sent to the German concentration camp. 3 months later, he was released. We immediately left Austria and traveled 8 years before arriving in the United States. I attended Brookline High School in Massachusetts and then Boston University. After graduating Boston University, I served in the U.S. Army, got married and had 2 children. And I now live in Cumberland, Forsyth, Maine. And this was the beginning of my book, Out of Vienna, 8 Years of Flight from the Nazis. So quickly, I'll just say this. Do adults remember what happened to them when they were 7 years old? I remember how in Vienna in 1938, I started school each day in the 2nd grade over 70 years ago. I remember exactly where I sat in the room, in the classroom. I sat in the first aisle on the right side of the room next to a window. I remember my classmates and I were waiting for our teacher to arrive and the bell to ring for the start of the school day. The classroom door opened. A teacher, a tall woman, entered. We sprang to attention, just like soldiers. She marched to the front of the class. She faced us, raised her right arm at a 45-degree angle, and shouted, "Heil Hitler!" We also raised our right arms, imitating her, and shouted, "Heil Hitler!" Did I realize at that time that something was wrong? I thought so. Several days later, the Jewish boys were excused from that morning ritual. On March 12, 1938, German troops had crossed the border into Austria. Not a shot was fired. The people of Linz, an Austrian city on the German border, welcomed the Germans with kisses and flowers. The annexation of Austria had occurred. 2 weeks later, Adolf Hitler appeared high on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, a hero square where 500,000 Viennese were chanting, "Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil." What would happen to 250,000 Viennese Jews who made up 10% of that city's population? And we, for years, had paid no particular attention to the Nazi propaganda in Germany and in Austria. These successes caused envy of the Jews. The Nazi propaganda machine, anti-Semitism in Austria, started to take effect. While Adolf Hitler had been preparing to annex Austria, a German-speaking nation, we said it will pass, or anti-Semitism has been around for centuries. I then, I sat down and 7 years ago and started to write and write. And I wrote a book. The name of the book is Out of Vienna, 8 Years of Flight from the Nazis. And it took me 7 years to write the book. It has to do with my father being incarcerated at the Dachau concentration camp. We traveled through Europe, and in 1946, 8 years after 1938, we arrived in Miami and took a train to New York. And while on the train, the conductor came to us to look for tickets. He said, tickets please. And my mother and my father and my brother and I sat there. My mother handed him a whole bunch of papers, including our passports and visas. And the conductor looked at the bunch and he said, Hetty, and he saw the name, my mother's name on the passport. He said, Hetty, you are in America now. You don't need no passports. Thank you. And we've loved it here ever since.
Okay, my name is Max Labotsky. I'm a survivor in Holocaust. My family, almost, except my mom, my brother, and I, did not came back. And my grandfather, my grandmother, my niece, my aunt and uncle, they was all killed in Auschwitz, a gas chamber. My mom was in a camp where they make experiment, and Dr. Mandel was one of the doctors who did the experiment. She came back to Belgium, and she died she was in the hospital for a year and a half. After that, she died for 3 days after she was living with me and my brother. My father was killed in a mine, in a salt mine, in the border from Russia and Poland, and the mine collapsed and he died. I was in Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Dachau, the whole thing in 1 year and a half. It was my father was in 1941, my mom was in 1942, and I was in 1943. I never saw them back, except my mom for a very short time, and my brother was in a sister covenant, and he was safe. We passed a very bad time. I lost my family, and I have a very hard time. Then I moved to America. I was married first, and then we came to America. Since then, I have much better luck, and I was so much good luck, I married twice. And I don't know how much more I can go. And we have a very short time each one to talk. I will give the mic to somebody else, and he can continue for himself. Please. Thank
you. My name is Harry Blumenthal. My wife and I live in Yarmouth, Maine, and we're so happy there. We love Maine. April 11th, 1945 was the worst day I've ever spent in my life. This is the day I was with the 120th Evacuation Hospital, and we entered Buchenwald concentration camp. I was one of the very first soldiers that entered the camp, and we also had some infantry from the 4th Division who had shot the locks off the gates. There was a huge fence that was to our left, and nobody seemed to know what was there, so my friend and I piled up a lot of stones so we could see in. My friend came down and he said, "Harry, don't look." I said, "I have to look." So I got up on these stones, and inside this fence was a farm wagon, a huge farm wagon, as big a farm wagon as you could ever imagine, with bodies, bare bone bodies, neatly, dramatically packed. We looked across the way and there was the crematorium. There were bones still in the ovens. There was smoke coming from the chimneys. I couldn't realize, I had no idea whatsoever until, it all came to me. This is a concentration camp. This is a crematorium. Why is this here? As we went through the camp, first of all, as we came into the camp, we walked up a steep hill. The bottom of the hill was a rail station, and the rail cars, the small rail cars, the doors were open and there were bodies on the floor of the rail cars, bodies beside the cars. And we walked up this hill to the camp. I didn't know what the name of the camp was. And there were bodies along both sides walking up. They all had been shot in the back of the head. I couldn't believe I was awake. I mean, I had to be dreaming this terrible dream. I was an advance party for the 120th Evac Hospital, and they weren't permitted to come in until the following day. What we found were hundreds and hundreds of bodies throughout the camp. There were ditches, and there were toilet ditches. There were bodies sprawled in those. There were so many bodies, I don't think an undertaker in a lifetime would catch up to me. There were two camps. There was the upper camp, and these were the ones that were fairly in good shape. They were the workers. And these were people who came from all countries in Europe where the Nazis had invaded. The lower camp were those that were, I'd say, within minutes ready to die. Walked into this barracks, and you say you can't remember an odor. I remember the feelings and how desperately sick I was. I've smelled a lot of things, good and bad. But this was the worst. I mean, I don't want to think about it because the thing I think about is how terrible it was. We could only stay in there so long, and there was no toilet facilities. It was an embarrassment to humanity. Our outfit, the rest of our outfit came the next morning. There were SS barracks that we took over. We took as many as we could. We found some cots. We put blankets on the cots. Some we tried to feed. As soon as they tasted food, they died. The food wasn't that bad. It was Army K rations, and that wasn't too good. But we couldn't give them IVs. It hit bone immediately. Some of the doctors yelled at me, "Harry, can't you give an IV?" I said, "You try." Same thing, they could not. They were penetrated and they hit bone. Every day, starting, let's say, the first day, we lost an average of 500 people a day. German. They weren't German people. They were people from all over Europe. There were a high Jewish population, very high population of Polish people. The Germans really had something against the Poles, and there was a hatred there. There were people from every part of Europe. It was tragic. The second day, General Eisenhower came, and I've never known that I knew Eisenhower had such humility within his soul. And he said, "First of all, I want every American soldier who is not on duty or in the front lines to come and witness this. That's my order. Secondly, I want the people of Weimar," that was the town below the camp. So I want them all walk up here. And you take guns, and if they don't comply, you shoot them. I didn't want to shoot anybody, but I got my carbine. That's the only thing I could hit with. And we brought them up, and on both sides of the road, there were the prisoners. And the prisoners sang Deutschland, Deutschland over alles. That's the German national anthem. At that point, the German people start spitting on the prisoners. It was the worst thing I could imagine. Stayed at the camp for about a week. None of us ate, none of us slept. I could say that man's inhumanity to man was expressed by the Germans. I've read many, many books. Hitler was probably the master villain of all times. He had a capacity for death. I could tell you many, many other things that happened in that period of time. But from there, we moved on to a town called Cham, C-H-A-M, in the Bavarian Alps. All through the roadways in that area, there were refugees, thousands of them, and we took care of those. It was an experience that I think of more so on April 11th, that I think about them in my dreams every single night.
My family. I'm Charles Roosevelt, and I was born. Is this on? No. Testing. Voice is kind of worn out. I'm a photographer, so we photographed the family of my pictures of a family. And I'm the only survivor right now of that family. And I put roses on them, just sort of symbolize wherever they are now in the spiritual world. I was born in Alsace-Lorraine, in Strasbourg, in 1932. Right after 1933, Hitler came into power, became the Chancellor of Germany, and that was the beginning of my demise. A lot of Jews the next day were stripped of their citizenship in Germany, so there was a huge exit of immigrants from Germany, escaping it, and my family knew about this persecution going on. So we left Strasbourg, we went to Metz, and from Metz we went to Vienna in 1938, because my father thought he could do business there in the art world. But it was bad timing, because that is when, as you heard before, Austria was annexed by Germany. Sometimes it's called the rape of Austria, the Anschluss. And we were there when Hitler arrived. In fact, my sister took me to the street, and I saw him in a parade. And then on November 11, 1938, two men came into our apartment and took my father to prison. And that day and that night, there were huge destruction of the city of Vienna, of Jewish shops. Windows were broken, that's why they call it Kristallnacht. And my father was arrested and beaten. And then we didn't see him for a month or so. And when he was released, we left Vienna, went into Belgium. How we got there, I'll never know. We went through Germany and got into Belgium. And Europe was pretty chaotic, pretty much like what's happening now in Ukraine. You don't know what's going on, and you feel the fear I can just feel what the Ukrainians must feel right now. It was very much like that. And then after that, in 1939, Poland was invaded, and then Belgium was invaded. And then we had to pack our suitcases and walk. We joined throngs of people, walked all the way into Belgium. Then Belgium was invaded in 1940. So we moved again. We got on a train. The train crashed by sabotage. And I lost my mother and my sister in the train crash. And my father disappeared because he was looking for a wheelbarrow. We all got reunited. I'm rushing through this. We all got reunited in Belgium after the Germany had won the war, had occupied Germany. We went back into it. We found my father, and we lived with him for a while. However, in 1943, he was arrested and never came back, and he was sent to Auschwitz. And according to the records I found, he was gassed upon arrival in 1943. Then my brother and I were the only survivors, Bernard, and we found, by a miracle, a monk by the name of Père Bruno Renders from the Louvain Abbé Mont César, who had hidden 400 children, took us under his wing. And I became what they call a hidden child. I pretended to be a Christian until the Americans came in 1944. We were liberated. I took two false names and pretended to be a Catholic. And for a while, I actually felt like a Catholic. I used to pray and everything. But then after the war, again, we were told I was over with, and I was brought back into the folds of the Jewish community. They were worried they were going to lose everyone, not just to the German, but to the Christians who were baptizing the Jews. So that was a dilemma. And then finally there was peace. When the Americans came, I never forget the day when we saw the tanks come in and we were liberated. And then in 1946, I was 14 years old, I found my mother's sister living in Peekskill, New York, and we came to this country. I came to this country, my brother and I, on a ship. That was the best way of traveling in those days. And here I am in Maine, telling you this story. And I've been going to schools for about 15 years now, talking to schools at much greater length about this story. And that's all I'm going to say right now. I'll be open to questions. Thank you very much. Chaplain, who was a rabbi, was a chaplain, and the priest up on top. And that was me there in the front row. And my brother called me up and said, "Charles, you don't believe this? We're in a book." And it was amazing. And I just now found that picture again. I just put it back in the slides. It's a wonderful, it really gives you the feeling. And it's hard for me to think that I was there. You know what I mean? That I was there with the soldiers. Like when I watch on television, Bands of Brothers, you know, that Temple show, very well done. It really was like that, you know. But then seeing American soldiers and Belgian soldiers with us, that's what that picture was. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't like speaking sitting, so I'm gonna stand now. Okay. So my name is Aruna Kenyi. I'm originally from South Sudan, currently reside in Portland. I know I'm jumping, so I will start from the beginning. I came to the States actually in 2003, so I've been here for 10 years almost now. I came toward the end of 2003. And the reason I left to come to the state was because of the civil war that occurred in Sudan. and that displaced a lot of people, and I am among those that were displaced during the war. In total, I think there were about 2.5 million people that were displaced, and many lost boys came to the state as well. Many of them came through Ethiopia, but I came through Uganda with my brothers. War in general is not a good thing. As you guys have heard from this gentleman up here, it's a heartbreaking thing when it happens. It's not something that everyone enjoys. I certainly didn't enjoy it. We had to go through a lot of difficulties. But through all this, I do embrace the challenges that I had to go through because it makes me who I am today. Okay. I lived with my brothers. My brother took care of us since I was 5. Okay. I was separated from my parents when I was 5 when the war occurred. Yeah. So I've been living. I lived in refugee camps in Uganda for quite some time throughout my teenager years. The refugee camp that I lived in the most was Kiangwali in Uganda, and that's where I was able to find the way to come to the States. Okay. That's where we filled out the applications, went through the process, and were able to offer the opportunity to come here. Okay. Now, when I came here, I thought all my problems would go away, right? But it's not like that. Everything is a learning curve. Everywhere you live or everywhere you go, there is always struggle, okay? And you have to adjust to it. Okay? But one thing that I tell people in presentation, okay, or tell kids in the classroom when I do present to little kids is that I do enjoy the education system here. Okay? People can really dislike going to school, okay? And you're not really my friend if you say you don't like school. I mean, I'll be honest. But I know it's challenging, okay? And I have my reasons for it. Right? I love school because I get to learn more. Okay? I get to learn about things that I don't know. Right? I get to learn about what happened in the States, right? The Civil War. I don't know what happened then before I went to school. Okay? But I learned all these things from going to school. Okay? It's a challenge. Education is a challenge. But it's something that we also embrace with a heavy heart. Okay. In Africa, many people don't get that opportunity to go to school. Okay? And many will kill to go to school. Okay? And I got that opportunity. I took it with open arms, and I was able to, go as far as completing my bachelor's degree. Okay? Now, I do want to go back to school, but I feel like resting for now. I will someday continue education. Okay? In 2011, I was able to go back home and meet with my parents for the first time in 16 years. And that was a very exciting reunion for me and my family as well. And I'm glad that I did have that opportunity to go back and meet with them again after so many years. Because actually my dad ended up passing away a year ago, and I'm glad that I did have that opportunity to meet with him before he passed away. That being said, I don't know, I have a limited amount of time, but I will answer more questions during the questions time. I have a book that I also wrote. It's about my journey from South Sudan to here. If you guys are interested, I have them there. They're $10. I mean, I will make a discount. They'll be $10. They're supposed to be $12, but I will, since we're in Fort Ken, first time here, I'll make a deal with you guys. Yeah, and I just want to thank Karen for inviting me here and having you guys here to listen to my story as well. I know I wish I had more time, but the kids that were at middle school today, I had a great time presenting to them. So thank you so much for having me here.
have any of these gentlemen gone back to Germany or Austria in the last, let's say, 10, 20 years? Have you gone back to see what it looks like?
A number of years ago, I was in Switzerland with my wife. We decided to drive in the Autobahn to Germany. I was partway there, I made a U-turn and came out. I couldn't be in Germany. But Margaret and I, my wife and I, recently, within a couple of years, we were at Auschwitz in Krakow, Poland, and Birkenau, and it was the saddest thing to see the Polish people. They're so distraught because after the Nazis left, the Russians came in. And some people said they were worse than the Germans. But they are not happy people. Their country has been changed and their lives have been changed. It's very, very sad.
Oh, I'm sorry. I never went back to the camp. I went back to Belgium very few times, but I never went back because the way they build the condominium is like a pleasant place. It's not. People die, I saw them, people die on the ground. They open the ground a little bit, put the pig, and then throw the sand on the top. And now they told me, oh, we go put condominium on the top. No, I don't accept that. If they need money, you got a different way to do, but not that way.
I have been back to Vienna several times, and I'll just tell you one incident that sort of signifies how I felt. We arrived, my wife and I arrived at the Vienna airport, and we took a taxi, and we got in a taxi, and I asked my wife, who does not speak German, I speak fluent German, to tell the taxi driver where to go, the address. Of course, taxi drivers in Europe speak and understand English. I did not speak German to the taxi driver. When we checked into a hotel, I spoke English to the receptionist, and I spoke very, very little German in Vienna, except for an emergency, but not a life-threatening emergency, just in case, just when somebody absolutely didn't understand me. Basically, I have an emotional prejudice, which I can't sort of get rid of. I'm not doing any harm to anybody with that prejudice, so that's it.
I've gone back, it took me a long time before I went back to Europe, almost 30 years before I had the stomach to go back, because just the atmosphere of being hunted down and the occupied Europe, I could not get it out of my system. And even when I went back in the 70s to Europe, I thought that we get stopped were there waiting for me to catch me, and they were still looking for me. But then, only about 2 years ago, I finally went to Auschwitz, Birkenau, to see homage to my father, because that's where he died. And at the end of Birkenau, there's a pond about as big as this room, in which the Germans had thrown the ashes of the dead. It's now a memorial. And I did a little movie of myself playing a Japanese instrument, the shakuhachi, in front of it. I learned a tune which is Japanese play for honorable men who have died, and I played that. And I played my tribute to my father finally. It is a painful experience to go to Auschwitz. It's a killing field. and you're walking on dust, and you don't know if it's real dust or human or what. And I don't know if I can recommend it. But I do go back. I did a movie where I interviewed people, I interviewed museum directors, I had a lot of questions. Certain prisons of Malines, where my father was interred and 65,000 Belgians were deported, is now modern apartments. You know, and they have a little museum. And then I went back to the Malines, the other place where we were, like the community, where we lived at the beginning of the war in Belgium. That is now a prison. Because when we were in there, the kid said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, we're looking at this as a kid. You can't be here." So it's sort of ironic. But I like going back. And I did go to Austria also eventually. And I took my revenge was to have pastries and coffee with whipped cream to get even with them. And even Vienna was hard to take. It's a beautiful city. And it's difficult to believe what happened. But I do want to go back again. I don't know about going back to the camps. I also went to Theresienstadt, which is a camp devoted to artists, all of whom were killed. And it was a front for the Red Cross to say, "Look how good we're treating the Jews." And the Red Cross boarded. They said, "You know, it's fine." But there were prisoners, 80,000 prisoners in Theresienstadt, who were all eventually sent to Auschwitz and murdered. So anyway, it's painful to go back and try to enjoy Europe again as a place of mine, like Strasbourg. I love Strasbourg.
I've never been to Germany, so yeah. But I've been, like I mentioned earlier, I've been back home to South Sudan. I was there for the celebration of the independence, and it was a great day. It was a very emotional day, but a happy one at the same time, because we finally get to be in a different country. So it was a great feeling.
Any other questions?
Mr. Blumenthal,
Do I have that correct?
when you went back to the concentration camps, a while ago you talked about the smell and how difficult it was for you. When you went back to visit, did that sort of all come back to you, or were you okay with that?
Comes back to me on the anniversary, the hard way, April 11th. It comes back to me, comes back to me most every day. It's a haunting experience. It's something I can't remember what happened to me yesterday too well. I can't remember what happened to me last week, but I can remember my experience at Buchenwald. And you can't forget these things. They haunt you. I wish I could have done more. I tried my best, and I just I have animosity to the Germans yet, and I tried my best to get over it, but I can't do it. Thank you.
Well, this is on a happy note. I lived in Miami for many years, and I'm telling you, the Jewish people are the most wonderful, generous, kind, thoughtful people I have ever met. They are, and all you gentlemen are Mensch. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? Yes. Okay, I was telling one gentleman, 60 years ago, I was a Shena Mädel Yiddische Schicksa. You understand? I'm glad somebody laughed. I wore a mezuzah. But anyway, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I have many, many Jewish friends that I keep in touch with, and I send them Passover cards. And, you know, it really was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And you know what they say, that some of the Jewish people, when they die, they don't go to heaven, they go to Miami.
You still wearing
No,
the mezuzah?
no,
Why?
Why? I'll tell you.
Give me two good reasons, and the two first one don't count. Go away.
Well, I'll have to give you the only reason. Well, a young man, a doctor gave me a mezuzah. We were friends, okay? But years later, this is funny because there was a man from Quebec City that was visiting there, and we, a group of people, and he could speak French. And I thought, well, if you speak French, you must be Catholic. Of course, I'm from this area. So if you're Catholic, you're French. Well, anyway, he said, no, I speak French, but I'm Jewish, and I'd love your mezuzah. So I gave it to him.
Then you should give him the money, go buy this. I keep mine.
Anyway, I thought that would be something I'd like to share.
Very nice, thank you.
I want to repeat a question that one of the students asked earlier today, and I thought was a pretty great question. What would you say your message would be for why you tell your stories, and what your message to everyone here who's listening is? Yeah, everyone had great answers, so if you want to go down the line.
I can't give a direct answer, but I'll tell you, it's sort of a selfish feeling. When I talk to students in high school, middle school, and colleges, and you sit there and listen to me and us, and you hear what we say, and then you ask questions. This gives me this tremendous satisfaction that you have perceived, that you understand the historical value of that period. And that's what makes me feel terrific. So anyway, thank you for being here.
Thank you. What I'm afraid, one man killed 6 million people. Young one, old one, people who never did nothing to hurt the neighbor. And they kill them because they was a Jew. And I don't want to get another one, crazy man, a man or person, I'm sorry, I don't say man, person who doing the same thing. I seen last Monday happened in Kansas. Kansas. They killed 3 people. These people, they don't do nothing. They were just there to go because they live there. But they don't do nothing. And that person came and shoot them. Why? I call that crazy. They should not either go in jail directly to kill them. That's all. These people was killed, they didn't ask her, why you do that to me? Give me a chance, let me go in court. No, they kill him. Thank you.
I tried to impress upon young people about the values and virtues of this country of ours. I said to them that I accepted the fact that I was willing to die for the United States of America, and that I had no compunction on that, because America has been good to so many millions of people. We're the best people ever. And I said that having fought with the American Army, as I did, we are great soldiers, and we will be very great in defense of this country if it ever comes to need.
That's right.
And I didn't realize that I was giving a message. When I first started to talk, I was asked by Sharon Nichols one day, would you like to talk about your story? And I said, well, in a way, I'm hiding in Maine. It's not Miami. And I'm sure when I go to heaven, I'll go to Miami. I'd like to. So I kept myself hidden. Even to this day, I keep a low profile. And people assume that I'm Christian, and they in no way I act Christian. You know, I've had both experiences, but I don't go out. I don't feel comfortable telling people I'm Jewish. It could be part of my neurosis. And I think this workshop is also about genocide. It's about genocide, killing of people. And I think that when you hear about this, and the children hear about when they grow up, they're going to know that do the best they can so it doesn't happen. Like even this happening now in Syria, 100,000 people were killed. It's genocide. Or what's happening in Crimea and Ukraine right now is scary. And like we say, we don't want history to repeat itself. And I hope, particularly speak to young people, they are the future. And I see them on C-SPAN, young people get very involved. And I tell the kids, you really know your history, important. Otherwise, you're condemned to repeat it, to relive it. So the message is, we don't want it to happen again. And I know a lot has been said about it, but just, it's hard to stop it. It's happening in front of our eyes. It's just amazing. Like Assad. I mean, that's my feeling. And the UN, I mean, they're very against it. What's still happening in front of our eyes, and we can't seem to stop it.
Why I share my story? This is a great question, okay? How many kids go here to the university here? Yeah, that's good, that's good. Okay. Okay. How many people have been outside of Fort Kent that goes here to school? Okay. Where? Like, anybody been to Africa? No? Almost? Okay. What country are you thinking of going to in Africa? Egypt? Yeah, I want to see the pyramids too. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else been to Africa or wanna be or want to go? Yeah, where? Egypt. Okay, so I see Egypt is popular in the building. Okay.
I have a granddaughter who was a nurse's training at St. Joseph's College.
Okay.
She was planning on going for extra credit in her program.
Okay.
But they canceled it because of the
Ebola?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The over their house.
Okay.
She's disappointed because she wanted to go.
Definitely feel for it. Okay, so here's the thing. Yeah? When I came to the States, I was referred to by most of my classmates as the kid from Africa, right? Right? That's the kid, the new kid from Africa. Okay? Now, I'm not saying I don't like Africa. I'm not saying I don't want to be referred to Africa, because that's where my roots are. Okay? That's where I am from. Okay? But there are differences. Okay? The difference. Africa is a continent, right? Any person who lives here, like right now, I'm a U.S. citizen, okay? But many people don't know that. Okay? They'll be like, that's the kid from Africa. Okay? It's not that they want to do that, but it's because they don't know, right? That's why they refer to me like that. Okay? So Africa is a continent, but there are countries, right? And in that, there are sub-countries. For instance, there are villages, right? There are counties, okay? There are payams. U.S. don't have that. I mean, they do have towns, right? But it's similar thing. It's the same thing, okay? And one of the things that really inspired me into writing my story is I want people to know what my culture is, okay? I want to be referred to as, oh, that's the Sudanese guy, okay? Instead of that, the guy from Africa, right? Yes, I'm African, but I'm from a different part of Africa, okay? And that's one of the things that motivated me, and I want others to know that, you know, just because there's Africa, there are countries behind Africa, and not every person that comes from Africa is from the same country. Right? There's so many languages, right? If I ask some of you who knows what my language is, probably the middle schoolers will know because I spoke to them earlier, but none of you guys will know what language I speak. Okay? I speak more than one language, one of them being English, of course, okay? but that's the language I learned here. I'm originally a native of the Bari tribe, okay? So I speak Bari. Okay? Now, that's what I want people to know. Okay? I want them to know that, yes, I'm African, but I'm Bari. Okay? And this is what my culture value, because we all value different things. We do not value the same thing. Okay? And that goes the same to each and everyone. Okay? We all want to be valued by our culture. We all want to be valued by what we like to do, okay, and not by what we are saying. Okay? 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 Now, how many people? I don't know. I mean, you guys haven't been outside of the country or visited Africa in general, right? But how many people have seen like TV clips from the media, right, about Africa, right? Seeing kids, you know, that are starving, right? Okay, you guys seen that, right? Okay, and then that's what each and every one is generalized with. Okay, we'll be like, oh, so that's how Africa look like, right? But it's not true. Okay, those videos are taken in a very remote area, right? During, you know, in one remote location where there's either fighting, okay? But not all the countries in Africa are like that. Yeah, there is suffering, I will not lie on that. Okay? There are wars, there's no doubt on that, okay? But not everybody is like that, okay? Now, when I came to the US, okay, like I mentioned earlier, there's no good, better, or bad place, okay? We all have to adapt, right? We all learn to adapt to that environment. Okay? Now, when I came to the States, I didn't like the U.S. For once, the food is different. Okay? So, and two, I didn't like the cold, right? Right? So I have to adapt to it, and it will be the same reaction for all of you guys. If you go to Africa, it's not hot all the time. Okay? There are seasons. You know, here we have 4 seasons, and there we have 2 seasons. So there are differences, and that's what I want to get across to every kid that I speak to, and I also want to be a role model, right? I want to advocate for my community. Okay? I want the kids to grow up knowing that, oh, you know, I want to do something similar to that, and how can I help my community? Okay? And that's my goal. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for African guy. I know. Sorry. You talk about seasons and stuff. I know I'm from the Caribbean, and we have seasons as well. But my question to you is, how would you compare your civil rights compared to the Nelson Mandela era? Like, how would you compare those two situations?
In terms, that's a great question. I never been asked that, but that's good. Civil rights in Africa in general, I think, you know, I will forever more respect South Africa. You know, I respect Nelson Mandela. He's my role model. Okay? I look up to him. Yeah. He done just a great job. And no one ever will do the same thing that he did. Okay? But not a lot of countries in Africa value that. I'm not saying no, the citizen, they do value it. Okay? But those people who are in government, those people who are in power, they don't have that. They don't have that. Most of those people who are in a leadership position, they value the power to themselves, okay? And they value controlling others, okay? They don't care about what others will have or not, okay? For instance, okay, South Sudan is a fairly new country, right? Okay? Most of the roads are dirt roads. Okay? There's no pavement, okay? Okay? There are money. They've been given money. Okay? We have oil, right? We sell the oil. But where is the money going? Okay. Okay. And that's what created war. That's what is causing war. Okay. That's why there is conflict still going on right now in South Sudan. Okay. everybody who is in a leadership role is selfish. Okay? And that's what needs to end. Okay? Africa can be controlled by one person, right? How is the US governed by one government, right? But each country in Africa have a different type of government, right? They're all selfish. Now, I know if I speak in front of them like this, I probably get slapped, but it's the truth. But nobody is like good enough to rise up, okay, and challenge them for it, because they will get killed. Okay? We have people who are knowledgeable. We have people that can do the work that they do better than what they can do, right? But they're afraid. They can't speak up. Okay? Most of the leaders took power by force. So they will not leave because they got there by force. Okay? And they keep staying in power. So in regard to civil rights, I don't think that's very much valued by most of the leaders, but people, the citizens do value it, but they don't have a voice to make that change.
I just love the microphone. So we have a couple of books and some movies, some short movies. Does everyone have their story in print of some kind, or has it been, written down or somehow, so that we can share with others? Because I met Max about 3 years ago and I have not forgotten him. I talk about him to all of my students. So, but I'm just wondering, is everything written down in some form so that this story can continue to, it's not, huh? You need to write it down.
You're
ready yet? Okay, well, I'll continue telling your story for a while.
I'm ready for a lot of things, not yet to write a book.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, I have to have help, and I cannot do it. Thank you. I cannot do it by myself because I never was in school. I was not lucky. And there is one reason. You say, oh, well, maybe you can go. No, it's very difficult after so many years to go in school for me. Some people have easy, I don't. All my life, working, I'm a tailor. I worked 68 years, and I retired 3 weeks ago. And I don't know for how long, but I'm not ready for
you. I've made several attempts at writing. I have a Master of Fine Arts from Vermont College. I did independent study where I thrived in writing. And I do write, I publish on the internet, other things, other anecdotes. My problem is I have high aspiration. If it's not going to be a good literary work worthy of Philip Roth or Vladimir Nabokov, or I don't want to publish it, you see. And that's my problem. I'm very critical, and I'm waiting to, I'm a good writer, and I've been writing other things, and I'm slowly getting into it. And I'm finding out, first I tried fiction. I had one version, 700 pages. And I even had a guy working with me on it, but I didn't like what happened. And it could be my demise, that I can't stop. And I don't want to self-publish either. I want to find a publisher who believes in me. And I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But I'm aiming too high, I think, the New Yorker and stuff like that. And I love Philip Roth, the way he writes. The voice is just so beautiful. And I'm very close to that kind of writing. So that's my problem. And I'm a good raconteur. You can't shut me up. That's the thing. And if I can write, I was told if you can talk, you can write. So I'm trying. I'm working on it. And I hope someday I did have a 50-page thing that I had copyrighted with the government because there's someone in California who wants to make a movie. And I wanted to make sure my story isn't stolen, and someone that's going to grab it. So I'm working on this, and I hope someday you'll find something in print.
Thank
Jewish being lost.
I have, as you know, I have written a book and I self-published it, and I have sold many thousands of books. But I was never a writer, and one day something happened with my grandchildren, my grandson. He wanted to know, he was in school, and he was playing a role, and he took my name, and he pretended he was me, leaving Europe because of those circumstances. Ayn Rand, who is a famous writer, wrote a book that's called How to Write a Book. And I bought the book, and it said this: sit down on a typewriter, she used the typewriter obviously, and just write. Forget about the spelling, forget about the sentence structure, forget about anything else. Just write as long as you can write, because everything else is easy. The editing is easy, the spell check is easy, typos, just write.
Very true, very good. I tried that, it don't work for me.
When I came back from military service and went back to the University of Pittsburgh, I took one of my courses was an English composition writing, and I thought I had a good paper, and I got back an F, so that's the end.
Come on, folks.
It's actually an answer to that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but at the Holocaust and Human Rights Center, I believe we have written and/or video testimony for all four of you, right? Yeah. So there is that as well.
The Spielberg also.
Yeah, and the Spielberg as well.
I think all of us have been, I'm not sure, but they have a huge archive. But that's something else what you're talking about, you know.
Yeah, so if you're looking for that, you can look that up as well. We're right in Augusta, Maine.
First off, I want to thank you guys for presenting yourselves as such. It takes a lot of courage and I'd like to say faith, I guess. You're very strong men. My question to you is that you were segregated as children. Do you still feel that you are being segregated today, or do you yourself feel segregated?
I didn't understand too well. Segregated, what was it? Could you repeat the question? That's my hearing problem.
Since you were segregated, during your childhood, different times, do you still feel segregated today?
Were we ever segregated? We were slated for death. I mean, I experienced that when to be Jewish meant you were going to die. Like all of us knew that. But in this country, or in Maine, I still feel caution. Because people sometimes in private talk to me and they come out with prejudicial remarks that surprise me, I get things emailed all the time. I have a friend who became Islamic at a time when it's kind of in vogue to take on Islam, the Quran, and he knows I'm Jewish, and he keeps writing to me, and whenever Israel does something, he blames me for it. And another person thought that people named Gold are all Jewish because they have money. It still goes on, so I'm cautious about it. I don't feel, in this country I feel free, I don't feel segregated. But definitely during the war, it was much more than segregation. I mean, we were just slated for death. And I know what the blacks went through in this country. I mean, it's shocking when they had separate bathrooms, you know, colored people only, stuff like that. I know the feeling. I know the feeling. So, you know.
What is so hard to lift your hand and make a question? It's not that hard. Much hard for me to write a book. Don't be shy. Okay.
This should be a good one. I taught this student, so I know he's got good questions.
So I'm just curious, how have your experiences influenced your personal political opinions and philosophies?
He said, how did your past experiences influence your political philosophies? Your political views and philosophies.
I could say something right now about that. I mean, there was a time, I swear, I wanted to become a card-carrying communist. I wanted to be about as far left as you can go. I was anti-everything. And I worked in a factory at one time as a student at Temple University. I also went there, summer job, and I met a guy who came in with book by Lenin and Karl Marx and all. And I couldn't understand certain work condition would drive you to it. But I think I'm way over on the left, but not communist, but I am a left, I'm on the left, and definitely a Democrat. And I think it's because of what happened, and I do believe, you know, I'm more liberal than I would have been otherwise.
That's really a good question. And what is the government made out of, if I can ask you guys a question? Yeah. What is the government made out of? Right? The Democratic or the Republican government? Okay? Okay. Okay. So it's made out of people, right? Is by the people, right? The people control it, right? Okay? So we are all a government, right? We can be in the government, right? So I think the past influenced me, you know, to advocate for those who don't have voices or those who can't reach what they want, right? And I'm not talking about here. Right? I don't want to be a president. I could be. Anybody can be a president. Okay? I don't want to be a congressman. I could be, but that's not my passion, right? Okay? I'm a big advocate for education. Okay? Now, I think education is a key to many things, right? Okay? You get to learn many things that will make you, you know, realize that, wait, maybe sometimes people do things without knowing it, right? Okay? If you don't know anything and somebody knows something, okay, you're not, say I'm educated and you're arguing with somebody who's not educated, they're gonna beat you an experience, right? If you're having a debate with somebody who is not educated, you will lose an experience, right? Okay? So what if everybody is educated, right? Everybody will have a better understanding of how the society works, right? Okay? So, and that's why I really like school. Okay? Now, will I forgive what happened in the past? Will I forget what happened to us in the past? I won't forget. You won't forget, you know, being beat by your parent for doing something wrong, right? That's something you won't forget. You won't forget when you broke your arm playing sports, right? Okay? So any experience that happened in life is something that stays with us. Okay? but you learn to embrace it. Why did it happen, right? You embrace it and do better. How can you do better? How can you not let it happen to somebody else? Okay? So we have to be the solution to the problem that happened in the past. Okay? Thanks.
This is going to be the last question. What is your bachelor's degree in, Lorna? What is your bachelor's degree in?
I can't remember the gentleman's name right here, but earlier you said that Americans are some of the best people that you know, but from my knowledge, Americans consist of European. America was, I should say, developed by European men who moved here. So technically, America is developed by good Europeans?
My answer to that, and I appreciate your question, is I consider my friends to be of very special value. I respect my friends, I listen to my friends, I evaluate what they say, and I think my friends influence to the answer to that question. I don't have many friendships with people I don't respect, and I respect my friends. Does that answer somewhat? Is that somewhat clear or muddled? But I think most of the people, I've been around 92 years. I've met a lot of people. I've dealt with a lot of people. I've met scores of people. And most of the people I've met, as total strangers, I think are good people. People essentially are good. Some people who try to influence them maybe are bad. People are born good. There's no bad influence. And I have good friends. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming, and I appreciate all the questions and the audience for this evening, for these amazing gentlemen. And thank you guys for presenting all day and tonight.